Three Guys Analyze is sponsored by KMC Artistry. Check the description to schedule your hair appointment today. Three Guys Analyze is also sponsored by Shortcut Lawn Care. Save time, save money with Shortcut. Read the description to set up your free estimate today. Welcome to the Three Guys Analyze podcast. With us today on the show, I'm Matt, your host. The other box on the screen is Tony. And calling in on his way north to Chicago is the great Rick Martin. Ricky, how's that drive north?
I'm driving through a rainstorm, so you can assume how it is.
Well, if your voice cuts out anytime during this podcast, we'll start making funeral arrangements. How's that sound?
Yeah, it's a rainstorm, and I'm driving through Indiana that doesn't have street lights and is surrounded by cornfields on all sides. So it's about to get interesting.
All right. Well, keep us informed of that as we go through this show. All right. So for the A block today, so our main thing we're going to talk about is it finally happened. Kawhi Leonard has been traded, but surprisingly has been traded to the Toronto Raptors. So we the North indeed. Kawhi is going to Canada. So the Raptors will receive in this trade Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, and the Spurs will receive DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and one 2019 first rounder, but that is a pick 1 through 20 protected. So first off, Tony, who in your mind has won this deal between the Raptors and the Spurs?
I think when you look at it, I think the Spurs won this deal because they managed to pick up DeMar DeRozan, who is an all-star and a quality player. They picked up Jakob Poeltl, who is a quality role-playing center, and they picked up a first rounder, which if it's 1 to 20 protected, I mean, they'll probably get that pick. So late first-round pick for Kawhi Leonard, who's already said, he's leaving anyway at the end of the season. So now, you've picked up something for nothing. And, I mean, the Raptors, they don't know what they're getting out of Kawhi Leonard because, is he healthy? Is he not healthy? And this could be just a one-year rental as well. And, I mean, the Danny Green, that's just nice cap filler for them. So I would definitely go with San Antonio for this.
All right, Ricky, who do you got? Who's won the trade, the Raptors or the Spurs?
They both won the trade. I think it makes perfect sense for both teams. The Spurs won the trade because they're a 46-win team last year without Kawhi Leonard. LaMarcus Aldridge was an All-NBA player. DeMar DeRozan was an All-NBA player. So now, you look at the league, right? So there's 30 teams. There's 15 players that are All-NBA, and 2 of them play on the Spurs. So that's pretty good. I think the Spurs propelled themselves into probably the conversation for the third best team in the West, which is saying something because as we've talked in previous weeks, the West is very loaded this year. I think it's great for the Raptors as well because the team that they had constructed wasn't going to beat Philadelphia. It wasn't going to beat a healthy Boston team. And basically they were going to blow it up anyways. They fired their coach who, by the way, just won Coach of the Year a couple weeks ago. So this way they get Kawhi on a 1-year deal. They get DeRozan contract off the books. Maybe Kawhi returns back to his, 2016 MVP form of being the third best player in the league. And now they have a chance to actually make it to the finals because I do think if you put a healthy Kawhi and if he returns back to the Kawhi we saw in 2016, that team has enough to at least challenge Boston for the best team in the East. And if it doesn't work out and Kawhi leaves, well, then you have essentially dumped DeMar DeRozan's contract, and you can, go and get some cap space and start over. So I think it works out for both teams.
And I think for me, we can't judge this trade now. I think we have to judge it at the end of this season. If Kawhi re-signs with Toronto, I think it's a steal for the Raptors. But if he doesn't re-sign, then they're left with Kyle Lowry and Danny Green. So I think we won't know until that happens. So when we look at the aftermath of this trade, we look at where do the Raptors stand and where do the Spurs stand. So Rick, what does this mean for the Raptors? Are they now – they were already contenders in the East, but does this bring them ahead of Philly and Boston?
it doesn't bring them ahead of Boston. I think even, and this is all, so I guess for the sake of this conversation, we will assume that Kawhi is near the level that he was last we saw him healthy, which was, 2 seasons ago. So I don't think it brings them ahead of Boston because I think Boston has much more depth and depth in the players where it matters, right? Like Valanciunas and Serge Ibaka are great front court guys, but that's not, or back court guys, but that's not, no, I said that right the first time. But that's not really where the NBA is being played now. Boston's got a lot of wing players that are versatile, can guard multiple positions. So I don't think it makes them better than Boston. I do think it makes them better than Philadelphia, just given their experience. And Kawhi Leonard, obviously, he's been there before. He was the 2014 Finals MVP. So I think they're the second best team in the East if Kawhi Leonard comes in, if his attitude's right. I mean, that's the other part of this trade too. Not even health physically, but mentally. There's been a couple. Vince Carter came out and said it earlier this week. Another Toronto insider, if you will, came out and said that there's no way Kawhi Leonard's playing in Toronto. So who knows? I mean, he sat out last year because he didn't want to play in San Antonio. He's proven that he's willing to do something like that. So who's to say he won't just sit out and not play for Toronto? I mean, that's always a possibility. So we'll see. But I would say a healthy Kawhi makes them the second best team in the East, in my opinion.
All right, Tony, where do you stand with the Toronto Raptors going forward?
I think, like as Ricky was saying, I think the motivation of Kawhi Leonard is going to be the biggest question mark on how well the Raptors can be. I think they're in that top 2 in the East just because of the overall, well-being of the Eastern Conference right now. Remember this was a team who set a franchise record for wins and was the number 1 seed in the East last year. We do forget that, and they just ran into old demons, I guess, if you will, with the Cavaliers. But if they get a motivated Kawhi to actually play for them, I mean, that might be the balance out over DeMar DeRozan and get them over the top and beat Boston even. But, I mean, you also got to think Boston, definitely question marks on that team anyway just because of injuries. However, the way they played last year in the playoffs, we'll just have to see. Like I said, motivation is the key factor here.
Right. I think for me, the Raptors' biggest problem last year was not DeMar DeRozan. It was Kyle Lowry. Watching the games, every time he touched the ball, every time he handled the ball, every time he decided to take a jump shot, like that's a winning play for the Cavaliers or any team. Like he was out of shape last year. The fact that they didn't play Fred VanVleet over him, I don't know why, but I think for me, it all depends on Kawhi's level of motivation. Is he still hurt? Is he going to re-sign? Obviously, I think regardless of how Kawhi plays next season, he's going to get a max contract after the year. I don't think that's even in jeopardy. We all remember when Vince Carter wanted out of Toronto where he just kind of stopped playing. NFL, when Randy Moss no longer wanted to play for Oakland, he just stopped playing. I mean, does Kawhi do that knowing that if he's not 90%, does he even want to come out and play anymore? I think regardless, the Raptors in the top 3. I guess it all depends on how well the Bucks do or a team like that. How well do they improve? But are they better than Philly? Are they better than Boston? I don't think so. Because, Danny Green's a nice piece, but, DeRozan was a top 15 player in the NBA. So when you lose him, you bring in Kawhi, could be a top 5 player in the league, but we haven't seen him play in a year, and we don't know what his level of commitment is. Okay, so we move south to San Antonio. And, so they replace Kawhi with DeMar. How well does that fit in? We don't know. Tony, what do you think that means for the Spurs?
The Spurs, they won so many games last year, and they made the playoffs with Kawhi only playing a handful of games anyway. I think they're in that middle class of the West where they could be ranked anywhere between 3 and 10th when you look at it. Even with DeMar DeRozan. I think DeMar DeRozan plays into that he has that strong mid-range game where Pop has always encouraged that as well. The question will he be able to step out and shoot 3, and will it go in? And I think that'll be the big success on how well his 3-point shot meshes with LaMarcus Aldridge in the post.
All right, Rick. What do you feel about the Spurs' chances next season?
I disagree with Tony a bit in saying 3 through 10. I think that's undervalued. I think they're solid, like 3 through 5. Like it's them, Utah, and probably Oklahoma City to me is going to be your 3 through 5 seed. But yeah, they were the 7th seed last year, won like 46 games without Kawhi. So you add DeMar DeRozan to that team. I mean, their starting 5 is pretty formidable, right? So it's going to be like Patty Mills, Rudy Gay, DeMar DeRozan at the 2, Rudy Gay at the 3, Paul Gasol at the 4, LaMarcus Aldridge at the 5. They had a Deontay Murray. He was coming along as a good guy off the bench role player. So I think the Spurs are going. DeMar DeRozan too, to me, seems like a guy that is a system guy. Like he could be like a very good system player. And I'm not as really concerned with him not having a 3-point shot because he can work on that this offseason. And I think that the Spurs and Greg Popovich is smart enough in the basketball mind to work around his, lack of a 3-point shot. So I think that they'll, be 48, 49, 50 wins and probably get to the second round. I actually think with the way that Houston has went this offseason, losing Trevor Ariza, losing Abad Mute, and possibly gaining Carmelo, which we'll see how that works out. I think if those two teams meet in the second round, I wouldn't be shocked if the Spurs knock out Houston. I think Chris Paul's got another year older. He just got a big contract. Who knows what his motivation is going to be? I think the Spurs are the real deal now.
All right. So let's just take a vote. Tony, if you had to give a percentage on whether Kawhi re-signs with the Raptors, what do you think it is?
15%.
15%. Ricky, what do you think it is for you?
I would have said 0, but after witnessing what Paul George did, I'll say 25%.
Moving on to the weekly sports rundown. We have a couple of topics we're going to hit real quick and move around. The first main thing, staying with the NBA, is Melo has finally been traded, and if you're watching the video, you can see me using quotation marks, traded to the Hawks. We know that the Hawks are going to waive him at some point, and you'll be free to sign with any team that has a cap room for him. So OKC trading Melo to the Hawks. They receive back the German point guard Dennis Schroeder and Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, who they receive from the Philadelphia 76ers. Atlanta will get Carmelo Anthony, Justin Anderson, and a 2022 first-round pick that is lottery protected, and Philly will get Mike Muscala from the Hawks. So, Tony, does this trade really mean anything in the long run for you?
I think it helps out Oklahoma City more than everybody else because all Atlanta did is they're going to be able to shed some cap space. Oklahoma City, on the other hand, picked up a very solid wing player as well as a solid guard in Dennis Schroeder.
Okay, Ricky, what do you think about this trade? Does it mean anything in the long run?
Well, we expected Melo to be not playing for Oklahoma City just due to the tax bill and his contract, so I think that's expected. I don't know how Dennis Schroeder and Russell Westbrook are going to play together, to be honest, because, and again, this is just maybe because he was playing on a bad team, but Dennis Schroeder to me seems like a poor man's Russell Westbrook, where he needs the ball in his hand and he's kind of willing to go out there and try to score 80 points if he has to win the game. But it'll be interesting to see kind of his development alongside Russell. I actually like Dennis Schroeder as a player. I think he has a lot of potential, and maybe he'll go under Russell's wing, and he'll help him out, and he'll kind of realize or become more than where he is today. But I don't think the trade means a ton, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Hawks wanted to get off of Dennis Schroeder because they just drafted Trae Young. So this makes sense for them. They get somebody to take Schroeder. And I think you're right. He kind of plays a similar position. They're both point guards, but he plays very similarly to Russell Westbrook. And to my knowledge, he's not a great, spot-up shooter. So, I don't know if they'll be able to play with each other. I think it's more of like a Russell Westbrook, Reggie Jackson situation. where when Russell comes off, Schroeder comes on. So we'll see. I kind of like Schroeder because he's slashing and he likes to get to the rim. So, I mean, we'll see how that works out. Obviously, the bigger deal here, I think more so than OKC getting Schroeder, is Melo will get waived and he will sign. So he will be on the open market. It's not a matter of months now, but it's a matter of days. Tony, who do you think Melo will sign with?
Houston. I don't see anybody else signing him. I mean, I would say 75% Houston, 25% we'll throw in the Lakers.
All right, Rick. So we've talked about it before. Who's Melo signing with?
I still go with Houston. I actually probably kind of agree with Tony's percentages, although I don't know what a trade or a sign with the Lakers would look like from a contract perspective. But I would go with Houston. I think that'll be interesting because, to me, Houston's lost quite a bit this offseason, and this is a bit of a Hail Mary. Mike D'Antoni's come out and been very open and honest that Melo is basically the reason why he left New York as their head coach, and Melo wouldn't buy into his system, wouldn't move to power forward when he wanted Melo to, wouldn't really get in shape and buy into the whole, getting up and down the court, up tempo. So I don't know. I guess it'll be very interesting to see if how that all shakes out. But I think this is a very, if Houston signs him, which I believe they will, is a very desperate move to try to, it's amazing if you think that Houston's window to beat Golden State really ended up being 1 year. I mean, because I don't think anyone can sit here today with the moves Houston's made this offseason and the moves Golden State's made this offseason and have said that Houston's closed the gap even more. So Houston kind of had a 1 year window to beat Golden State and win the NBA title, and they came within what many, and I myself believe, a Chris Paul hamstring injury away from doing it. But kind of just it's just crazy to think about that your window can be that small.
Last week we talked about, or the week prior, we talked about LeBron and his new great teammates, about Rajon Rondo, Lance Stevenson, JaVale McGee. And what do you know? They got another great signing today. Michael Beasley has signed with the Lakers for 1 year, $3.5 million. So, I mean, who's left to sign with them? I mean, can they get Swaggy P on the team? Does Ron Artest come back and play for them? I mean, who else is there? Tony, what do you got to say about Michael Beasley?
Is this just a James Jones signing? I mean, honestly, is he just the 12th man here? I mean, honestly, I hate the Lakers. I'm just gonna point that out. I can't stand them, even before LeBron.
All right, Rick. What you got any hot takes here on Mike Beasley signing with the Lakers?
So, Michael Beasley, I actually don't. Michael Beasley and I have kind of a unique relationship here because I started a expansion franchise on 2K last year, and he was my expansion pick, and I made him the star of my team, and he performed, man. He's got some game in him. But in all seriousness, he had a couple games in New York last year where I feel like he scored like he showed flashes of being like a top pick, like that he was coming out of college. I mean, he had some games where he put up 25, 28 points, 10 rebounds. I mean, I think it's a terrible signing because I mean, it's literally like the Lakers are trying to form, like, I think they're trying to start the first real world NBA edition because the personalities and people that they have concocted for this team out in LA, it's put a camera on it because it's just, you thought J.R. Smith throwing the tortilla soup last year was some drama for a team. I mean, wait until all these guys in the locker room together. It's going to be awesome.
All right, so moving off of basketball, last week we previewed the Open Championship, and Rick has opinion. So, Rick, what is the Open Championship update for the listeners today?
All right, so I'm going to get this guy's name right this week because last week, admittingly, I did get it wrong. But Tommy Fleetwood, okay, as I told you last week, it was my pick or my dark horse to win the U.S. Open. He is currently second. A couple shots out of the league. Shot a -6 today, low score of the day. Zach Johnson's winning. Tiger Woods is somewhat in the mix. I think he's even, so he's down 6 headed into the weekend. But as we've seen before, you can come back from that pretty easily. Jordan Spieth's in the mix. I tell you what, golf is a fantastic sport to watch when big names are doing well. And I think that that's the case for this U.S. Open. It's shaping up to be a really, really entertaining weekend. So I would highly suggest to tune in.
All right. So moving off of golf, we have our 3GA pop culture report. So I will start this segment by giving my one-sentence movie review of Justice League. I finally watched it. Came out last year in 2017. Movie directed by Zack Snyder, but late stage in the game. He was having some sort of family issue, so Joss Whedon finished the movie. It features Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, and the villain is Steppenwolf, not the rock band, but the character. And my one-sentence review is, when does Wonder Woman 2 come out? I'm giving the movie 2.5 mediocre origin stories out of 5. Okay, second topic in the pop culture report today is today it came out that James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, has been removed as a director and writer from Guardians of the Galaxy 3 over tweets he made in 2007, 2008. This movie was planned to start shooting next month. So obviously Marvel is going to be in a scramble. Disney's going to be in a scramble to find a director. Tony, what are your instant reactions from that news?
When I see this, in a non-political stance here, I will take it. Just watch what you say on social media, because you never know what's going to come back to haunt you. In this case, that came back to haunt him over the statements that he made. And it's a shame because, from what I've heard, Marvel is looking towards James Gunn towards the future of their cinematic universe. So now I'm wondering where that's going to stand now that all that's in limbo. And, without a director, and if filming was supposed to begin, next month, one thing you're going to see is who's going to want to take this, because he did a great job with the first two, and it's going to be tough shoes to fill in order to step in.
Yeah, Rick. So when last week when I did my top 5 of Marvel movies, you mentioned just that Guardians was your favorite movie. So do you think removing James Gunn from Guardians 3 will affect the quality of that movie?
It's got to affect it in some way because he was so instrumental in the first two, But I'm sad as a fan because you're right. That's probably my favorite group of characters and movies that I like to follow. Who did Thor Ragnarok? Do you guys know that off the top of your head?
The New Zealander Taika Waititi did Thor Ragnarok.
Because I do feel like that guy could he's got the right kind of sense in terms of the vision for the movie to do a good job with this. So if I was in charge of Marvel and Disney, I would probably tag him and have him come in and direct this movie. But I don't know, you still got a really strong cast of actors that are funny and good at what they do, and you've got the storyline. So It's got a chance. It's not completely lost all hope.
Ricky, I agree with you. I think Taika Waititi would be a great guy to fill in. Tony, what do you think about that? The guy that directed Thor Ragnarok directing Guardians 3.
In a pinch, yeah, I could see that. If Marvel came out and said, "Hey, do this movie because you have a great comedic background," and that's kind of what the movies lend to. It'd be very interesting to see who they get for this. Typically, they've gone with lately more diverse directors. So that would be interesting. Are they going to hire, somebody who's unknown, possibly like they have before? It'll just be interesting because, this movie was going to be, I feel like, really great because James Gunn had a great formula and had a way with working with these characters. So I wonder if somebody can come in, bring that same enthusiasm, and still turn out a great as expected movie.
Right. I mean, if we consider the lowest of the low of Marvel movies, we're thinking of Thor 2. So, I mean, that's the worst thing it could be. And, who knows how advanced James Gunn's script was. We assume that they'll use the same script. So I think even with that, I think they'll bring in a director. I think Taika works, like I said, someone else. Obviously, someone with a comedic background would be great. But I think overall, the movie will be okay. It'll be fine. And we'll just it still has a great cast. And, we all know a cast is like 95% of a movie, especially these Marvel movies. So we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully in the next, I would say, month or so, they'll probably have a director already attached because they want to get those things, right? This is the Marvel churn that we're dealing with. Okay, so we talked about some movie news. Now we're going to move on to TV news. So our first point of business is me and Tony are really obsessed with watching these Fox cooking shows. So if it's on Fox, Gordon Ramsay is involved. He has 2 shows that he stars in on the air right now. The first one is MasterChef, which I believe is in its 7th season, 6th or 7th season. There's also MasterChef Juniors, but we're going to talk about the adult MasterChef. And his other show, 24 Hours to Hell and Back, right? So basically, he goes into these restaurants, and he has 24 hours to turn them around. So, Tony, we'll start with you. So when we're looking at 24 Hours to Hell and Back, what show does this compare to?
Well, it definitely compares to Kitchen Nightmares, and I think it was one of my recommendations a couple weeks ago. Basically, what I like about it is he's given himself one day to completely turn around these restaurants rather than the preface of going through a week. And it's just, I think these restaurants are even grosser than what was on Kitchen Nightmares. I mean, there was the one episode where there was a mouse in the toaster. I mean, the biggest question I have with this show is, where are the health inspectors in these cities to see the gross, like, the kitchens that are just so unclean and the food prep that is, I mean, they showed a cross-contamination of, like, fruit being cut against chicken, like raw chicken. It was just, there's like 3 or 4 times where I have like physically wanted to gag myself because of the gross things that I've seen on TV.
One of my favorite things to do when watching either Kitchen Nightmares or 24 Hours to Hell and Back is actually eat while I'm watching it, just to test my gag reflex. I mean, some of these places are like unbelievable. And, we shouldn't be surprised because we've all eaten in dumps before. And you just don't think about what you're eating. But, like, you're like, they found a mouse in the toaster. Like, how does that even happen? Now, like, I can imagine it's hard to keep out bugs and mice, but at least, put your things in sealed containers. And it's like, even they don't even do that. It's like these freezers are like Chernobyl after the reactor went off. Like, what is going on? For me, I would say 24 Hours to Hell and Back is pretty much the exact same show as Kitchen Nightmares, but it's just condensed. It has like the emotional family drama, the crazy workers, like everything. So, I mean,
I love every single episode. Somebody has to fall on their sword. That makes me laugh because in the original Kitchen Nightmares, sometimes, or at least most of the time, they kept the same chef. But now in 24 Hours, I feel like somebody's got to be fired in the end. Whether it's like, I think it's mostly always been the head chef, and they've always promoted. But that just makes me laugh because it's like, why does somebody have to be sacrificing? Like, obviously, people just And the servers how many servers do you need in our kitchen?
40, easily.
I mean, you get like 5 customers a day, and for some reason, each person gets their own table. Like, that's never been understood to me on how overstaffed some of these restaurants are. And then you go to like some of these restaurants here, you can't get more than 4 or 5 waitresses for a big restaurant.
Right.
It just amazes me. And then they all want like better benefits from their bosses who already can't pay. And so they're complaining about that.
I think one of the biggest things for me is it's just the overall incompetence of the owners. Like, even on Kitchen Nightmares, the same thing. It's like, I've got a lot of money. Let's start a restaurant. I know nothing about how to cook food. I've never ran a business before. I've certainly never ran a restaurant. It's got to be easy, right? And it's like they're so incompetent. Like, one of the episodes, spoiler alert, they're paying this old chef $90,000 a year.
$90,000, yes.
To put things into a microwave. It's like, you don't need a college degree to understand that, like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Like, no wonder you're purging money because you're an idiot. Like, you deserve to be broke. Like, if you're making these choices. And, like, honestly, I don't think Ramsay should even show up. These guys need to, like, burn in, like, their own incompetence. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, why do you need the show to come to tell you this?
I'm interested to see how many of these stay open within 6 months after the episode, because I know when I was watching we would watch the reruns of Kitchen Nightmares, my wife and I, and we'd always have to look up to see if the restaurant's even open still or not. And I would say at the time, like 85% of the restaurants were already closed anyway.
Right.
So I'm interested to see, like, if Gordon does help these restaurants succeed further down the road.
Well, the problem is, I don't watch the show you're talking about, but you're describing it to me. Like, if I watched the show on the restaurant that they were doing, like, I don't care how much they turned it around. I would not go back to eat there. Like, the fact that they let it get that bad in the beginning, like, I don't think the television crew coming through and Gordon Ramsay sprinkling his magic dust on them is going to, like, fix their main issues. Like, it doesn't just seem like a great business plan to have your restaurant be, like, bare bones shown to the world of how crappy it is, and then be like, oh, now we're better. Please come eat here. And we promise we won't cut our fruit on this next to all this raw chicken next to the mouse that's dead in the toaster.
You're absolutely right. And one of my favorite things I like to do is to read the Yelp scores, like, as I'm watching the episode, because some of them are before they do it, and then some of them are after. And the best ones are the people that are in the restaurant while Ramsay is in there. Like, on Hell's Kitchen, it's really easy to do because they, like, plan, like, this new opening so everyone comes. And that's very interesting to do, because some of the people say, like, they comment on how they've been there before, and then they say how it's changed and whether it's the same or different. So that's kind of interesting. So, Tony, you've talked about it before, but your favorite show is MasterChef to watch with Gordon Ramsay on it. So you tell us, how does that compare for you to, like, say, Hell's Kitchen?
Hell's Kitchen's professional chefs. So I think that really, bogs me down a little bit, because I like watching the amateur chefs kind of come in and compete and see what they have to do, because they weren't professionally trained as well. But I also love Hell's Kitchen too. I definitely think the dynamics of both shows are nice. The one thing that I think between Hell's Kitchen and MasterChef is that, Gordon's a little more relaxed. Granted, he's still uptight Gordon, but he's more relaxed because Hell's Kitchen's like his baby, and it's just, I think you watch the shows for different reasons than just they're just cooking shows.
Right. And for me, my favorite thing is about MasterChef is the cooking. You see a lot of the cooking.
Mm-hmm.
They're always making different dishes, so you get to see, like, different people, especially of, like, an ethnically diverse backgrounds. Like, the Asian people on there are always making, like, Asian fusion food, and people from the South are making, like, Cajun food, Southern food, and people on the West Coast, on the East Coast, they're making all these different foods. And it's really good to see them come together and kind of take on different, like, here's a steak, so make it this way or make it that way. So I think that's interesting to see. Now, one of my main things I like about Hell's Kitchen is Gordon Ramsay yelling at people and making them look so small and dumb and terrible. And when those two things fuse, when he yells at people on MasterChef, that is the greatest TV I've ever seen, because these guys just cannot, and they just break down completely, and it's incredible to watch.
I love watching the guests, like, when they're in Hell's Kitchen, like when Gordon starts going off, like, they just start laughing, like, ha ha ha.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, when he really lays into someone, usually, like, when something's raw, he'll yell and then just throw the plate against the wall or smash it into his hands, or just physically demean someone right to their face, calling them a cow or a donkey. That's always exciting. I remember this one season where he yelled at some guy, like, he fainted and, like, hit his head on the table. Like, he was just so out of it. Like, that's incredible. That's incredible TV to watch. Okay, so moving off of that, we're talking about all these cooking shows, right? So, Tony, who is your favorite TV chef?
Besides Gordon Ramsay, I would definitely have to go with possibly Mark Murphy off Chopped. I think he's a phenomenal judge on that.
All right, Ricky, who's your favorite TV chef?
So I'm going to switch this up from what I told you guys earlier, because I just thought of my favorite one, is Michael Simon. And his personality is amazing, and he appears on multiple, like, Iron Chef. He is an Iron Chef. He'll, do some Chopped, some celebrity, like, guys grocery games. But His cooking, I've never seen the guy lose. Probably watched him cook against people 20 times. Every single time he wins, he's awesome. So that's my favorite.
I mean, personally, for me, the only real cooking show I've ever watched are Gordon Ramsay shows. So he's my favorite. I guess I'd give a shout out to Graham Elliott, who used to be on MasterChef, who I thought he was a pretty good chef, and I've eaten his food before, and he's pretty good. Okay, so moving off of the cooking shows, I'm going to give a quick preview of the new HBO show, Sharp Objects. So this is a new HBO show. It's on Sundays at 9 p.m. It's directed by Jean-Marc Vallée, who directed Dallas Buyers Club, Wild, and the most recent show, Big Little Lies, which got nominated a whole bunch of Emmys this past year. It's written by Gillian Flynn, who wrote Gone Girl. So the basic plot of the show is two girls are kidnapped in this small Missouri town of Wind Gap, and they are brutally murdered. So a mystery is involved there where they have to try to figure out who the killer is. It stars Amy Adams as the lead. She's like a reporter from St. Louis, but is also from this town of Wind Gap and has her own secret, like mysterious childhood upbringing that you learn through the show, through flashbacks and through interactions with the town folk. It also stars Chris Messina as Detective Richard Willis, who you may know from the Mindy Project. Patricia Clarkson plays her mother, Amy Adams' mother. And the entire town is so small and has these different people in it. You never know what their true feelings are, what they really mean when they talk to each other, what they're hiding. Who is this kidnapper? Who is this murderer? And Amy Adams kind of moves through this town, rediscovering past locations and trying to ingratiate herself back into this community. You kind of get a sense that she was like ostracized from the community or that she left. Something happened there we don't quite know yet. It really reminds me a lot of True Detective, the first season anyways, where you're put into this bayou type country and you really don't know what's going on, but it's very mysterious. The people are odd. There's not quite something right. There's a great tone to this show, and it's very consistent. There's also a great soundtrack. Every time Amy Adams gets in her car, she hooks up an old iPod and just listens to it, and kind of that flows through it. So if you're into that sort of thing, check it out. It's on Sundays at 9 at HBO. I think it's an 8-part miniseries. My top 5 for this week will stem off of that. My top 5 mystery TV shows. And this is presented by new sponsor, Reflect Computer Services. So if you need any computer services, check that out. Check that out in our info, and I'll list the information there. So Matt's top 5 murder mystery TV shows. Number 5, Top of the Lake on Sundance, featuring Elizabeth Moss. Number 4, The Night Of, which was on this past year on HBO, starring Riz Ahmed. Very good show. Number 3, Broadchurch, which you can watch on Netflix, which originally aired on BBC. Number 2, The Great Twin Peaks, right, which came back all the way back in the 90s, came back for one season last year on Showtime. And my number 1 murder mystery TV show is season 1 of True Detective. And I say that because watching it every week, it was like the lost of a new generation. You never knew what was happening. I mean, talk about the reconnaissance with Matthew McConaughey and the great Woody Allen. Tony, you got any comments on my top 5 there?
You know, when I think about this, when I think murder mystery, I think about my geriatric CBS crime procedurals, and I could probably stem the top 5 off of that.
Right. Okay, Ricky, do you have any comments on my top 5 murder mysteries?
Yes, so I have 2 comments. One, Night Of has the best pilot/first episode of any TV series I think I've ever seen. I don't think the mini series quite lived up to how good the first episode is, but if anyone, I mean, like the first episode, in my opinion, is like a standalone, like almost like mini movie. I think it's about 90 minutes long.
Yes.
And you don't really even need to finish it, to be honest with you. So shout out to the audience. Just go watch the first episode. It's amazing. It is like, the pace is like great. You care for the characters instantly. And the director and writers do like a fantastic job of making you feel this like massive amount of anxiety that the characters are feeling during that episode. So fantastic. Highly recommend going and watching that. And then I agree with your comment on True Detective season 1. McConaughey, Harrelson, both fantastic acting. I mean, that is one of the best seasons of all time for any TV show I've ever seen, in my opinion. It's great television. So big shout out to both of those if you've never seen them.
Moving on, our last segment of the podcast, the Three Guys Analyze weekly recommendations. Tony, we will start with you. What is your recommendation to our loyal fans?
Check out The Magicians. It's on Sci-Fi, and you can also catch it on Netflix. 3 great seasons. They say it's a Harry Potter for adults. I could see that, as well as the fact that, it's magic and it's fun.
Ricky, what is your recommendation to the people this week?
Well, I've given 3 during this podcast now. So
3.
In order, go watch the U.S. Open. Yes, go watch the U.S. Open, which I gave a shout out to earlier. So watch the final round of that at least on Sunday. It's going to be fantastic. Watch the first episode Night Of, and then binge watch the entire first season of True Detective on HBO.
All right, and I will end on my recommendation, which is there's a show on AMC called Humans. It's a great science fiction TV show. It's about the rise of synths amongst humans. Super underrated. Go check that out on AMC, also on Amazon Prime. Okay, so that's episode 5, or episode 6 rather. Man, we're going up there. I'm losing track now. Of Three Guys Analyze. Right, watchers and listeners, be sure to hit us up on our Facebook page, our YouTube page. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter. Right, let us know what you want to hear about. Give us a like. Tell us how we can improve, or just how awesome we are. And make sure to leave us a comment, rate us, tell us how we're doing. And remember, you can listen to us on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and the Google Play Store. And guys, see you later. Three Guys Analyze is sponsored by KMC Artistry. Check the description to schedule your hair appointment today. Three Guys Analyze is also sponsored by Shortcut Lawn Care. Save time, save money with Shortcut. Read the description to set up your free estimate today. Three Guys Analyze is also sponsored by Reflect Computer Services. If you need any computer care, please contact Reflect at 567-825-1443.